Hello, fire goddesses, and welcome to episode 102. I am going to be talking about why it's important to have compassion when you notice yourself going into judgment. It's a pretty short episode today. It is packed with good information, especially at this time of the year when we are in the height of the holiday season. So I trust you will enjoy it. Happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, and stay tuned. Hello, fire goddesses. Welcome to the Reclaim Your Fire podcast. My name is Angela Noel, and I am a prosperity coach for the newly awakened or awake curious, driven overachiever, and overdoer. After running a successful acupuncture practice in Boston for 12 years, I decided to hang my hat by closing the practice and pursue what it is that I'm really meant to do in this world, and that is to serve humanity online on a global scale. Using my background in Chinese medicine, along with the brain science of habits, spirituality, and divine masculine and feminine energy balance, I am here to help you not just understand, but know how powerful you are and that you are the person who is responsible for having the finances, inner peace, radiant health, and energy, aka the fire, in your life that you've always desired. My intention with this podcast is to serve humanity, no matter what gender you identify as, to help bring out the divine feminine goddess in each and every one of you. As you probably are already aware, the world is changing and is begging for the goddess to come out in each and every one of you. So, fire goddesses, stay tuned. Hello, fire goddesses, and welcome to the Wednesday before Thanksgiving episode. If you grew up celebrating Thanksgiving, specifically in the United States of America, you know that this is typically a really, really fun day for going out and meeting your friends from high school usually, and it's the kickoff night for the holidays. It's just always a really fun time of the year, and it's a fun night. So, and speaking of the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I had another episode that I was planning on releasing today on healthy holiday boundaries that is just going to have to wait because I just got in from a walk and I'm actually supposed to be on the road right now on my way to my family's house in New York, and Spirit is asking me to come on the mic. So I'm going to chat with you for a few minutes before I head on out from my Thanksgiving festivities to chat with you about compassion and judgment and choosing compassion over judgment. Now, I was just outside walking with Ayla, and this is often the time of day when a lot of ideas come through, a lot of creative hits come through, a lot of ideas of what to write about and what to share regarding the business. And if you have been following, now I know I say I don't really watch the news, but this headline got my attention on Sunday, just a few days ago. And it was in a Facebook group about an overdue hiker in the White Mountains. And I've been following the story. Emily Sotelo, she's from the next town over from where I used to live. And it's just, there's been something that's been really just catching me when I follow this story. So I want to chat with you using this story as the lead to going into talking about compassion, especially around the holidays, where we have a holiday that's built around being thankful and gratitude. I think that this particular episode, healthy boundaries, is absolutely important, and I will be releasing that between now and Christmas. But this specific episode is really tugging at my heartstrings. So I'm going to go with it. I'm listening to the guidance, and I'm going to go with it today. By the way, before I go any further, for those of you that voted in my Instagram polls the other day, I put out 4 questions around subjects of content and program ideas of basically what you goddesses out there want to know more about. And I really want to express my gratitude. It was probably the most popular. I don't like that word, popular. It reminds me of, going back to high school. But it was the most responded to poll that I've ever had on Instagram. So I want to thank you all who voted. It was very, very helpful. It was very insightful, and you have no idea, actually. When you guys respond to those questions, it really helps me. It helps me form content. It helps me understand what you want to know more about. And it was also really helpful because I have been sensing certain topics have been interesting to you, and it just confirmed that. So while inner peace is definitely, I believe, where most of us want to be at. As you know, I just did an inner peace talk a couple of weeks ago, and it was wonderful, and it's still available if you want the replay. I'll throw the link to purchase it in my show notes. It's $22. You can watch it at any time. But what that poll told me was that you want to know more about financial abundance and financial freedom, which I love talking about money, especially when it comes to money and ways of being, like how we're showing up in the world, in our inner empire, and how that's reflected in our money story, in our money mindset, and what shows up for us financially. Now, if you want money recommendations and stocks to buy and 401ks, I have people for you that you can go to that can help you with that. That is not necessarily in my toolbox at this point. Maybe it will be later on down the road, but this is more about developing your inner empire so that you can have your outer empire, so that you can develop who you are on the inside, so that you can have the things in the material world that you desire. So that was one real big aha, because I haven't been talking about money a lot lately, because maybe it was just where I was at that particular time in my life. I was getting ready to get divorced. There were a lot of changes, and maybe my internal empire, my inner empire, was not aligned with the topic of money. So I'm going to be sharing more about money in future episodes, in future content, and in the programs that I create as a result of you all voting in this poll. And the next thing that you wanted to know about was intuition and the divine feminine energies, which to me is also so exciting. And I love talking about it. And it was just really delightful for me to hear from you that you want to know more about that specifically. And the last thing that a lot of you voted on about wanting to know, actually there were 2 more things. The next thing that you really wanted to know more about was healthy boundaries. So for me, that just lit me right up, because I feel like I could talk about healthy boundaries all day, every day, because I've personally lived through it, from having absolutely no boundaries and basically having no energy. My divine feminine energy was totally zapped. My intuition was zapped as a result of having no boundaries, starting with, because boundaries actually start with yourself first, and then boundaries are about your relationships with other people and how you protect your own energy by forming boundaries. So excited. And then last, but certainly not least, you wanted to know more about sex and pleasure at any age. And I was thrilled that you voted for that. A lot of you voted that you wanted to know more about that. And again, I've done 2 podcast episodes about that. Episode 35 which was just me solo, and episode 62, which is an episode I did with the fabulous Jen Stillion, where we talked about manifestation with sex and pleasure. And then episode 35 was getting real about sex and pleasure. So while you're waiting on content about sex and pleasure, please check out those episodes. And also, I want to invite you to go back. There's plenty of content where I talk about boundaries. Well, I should say, I did an episode on healthy boundaries post-pandemic. I don't have the link. I'll put it in the show notes. And also, I did an episode about fear and money and why you don't have it. So I will link all those up into the show notes so that you have them available for your listening pleasure. Okay, so usually I don't spend a lot of time in the intro self-promoting, but I just feel like that was so, your responses to just taking the time to respond to my Instagram polls was super helpful, and I want to express my gratitude publicly for that. So in today's episode, I'm going to chat with you today about compassion. So like I mentioned in the earlier part of this episode, the story about Emily Sotelo really just has been pulling and tugging at my heartstrings. And for those of you maybe in other parts of the world or in the country, her mother dropped her off to go on a solo hike early on Sunday morning. And this is the Sunday before Thanksgiving. Her and her mom were staying at a local hotel for Thanksgiving week, and she was an experienced hiker. And at the time of this recording, she is still missing. She has not been found, and search and rescue has been out and looking for her for the past, since Sunday, basically. So this is really what I want to drive home. So before I go on, I'll just share with you a little bit of the details that I know based on what I've been reading online about Emily. So her mother and her were staying at a local hotel close to where the trailhead is in the White Mountains. And her mother dropped her off early Sunday morning at like 5:30 a.m. and she was going to walk 3 different trails in the White Mountains. And she was wearing exercise pants with sneakers and long johns and I believe a lightish coat, but don't quote me on that because, again, what you hear in the news sometimes is not always accurate and we are not always getting the full story, which is part of the reason why I don't like to watch the news, listen to the news. But with this particular situation, I'm in several Facebook groups, hiking Facebook groups. And of course, there's been a lot of dialogue around this missing young woman. And there's also been, which has been really, really great, there's been a lot of people coming back and saying, listen, this is not a time to judge. This is a time to be compassionate, which I just want to say hats off to all of you people that are putting that word out there. One of the questions that a lot of people have is, why was this woman hiking alone in the White Mountains with minimal gear? I don't believe she had hiking boots on, at least that's what I'm reading. And she had, I guess wind pants or exercise pants. I don't know what that means. Is it trackers? Is it leggings? I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it's some kind of like wind resistant pant with long johns underneath. So minimal winter hiking clothing, minimal winter hiking gear. So those are the 2 big things. So now there's been all these people, all these responses around what was the mother thinking dropping her off? And what was this woman thinking wearing what she was wearing? And again, the focus is right now on finding this woman. And all of these people are projecting based on the little information that's in the media right now, which is actually really good. I think it's a good thing that there was little information because sometimes, the media makes things up or they get the facts wrong, and then that's not a good idea either. So little by little, a little bit of information has been coming out. So the thing is, it's really, really easy to judge. It's really, really easy to judge and blame the mother and blame the victim because she wasn't dressed properly and she didn't have her crampons and she didn't have her proper coat. We can all do that until the cows come home. However, how is that helping search and rescue, trying to find her, looking for her? How is that helping the mother who must be feeling, I can only imagine, and not to project, but I invite you, and I've been there too, okay? There was part of me that was like, oh, that's interesting that her mother just dropped her off. When you don't have a lot of information, the mind tends to, that's how the mind works, right? The brain wants to fill in the parts that doesn't make sense with projection. And I know that this is part of our human nature to do this. But the other side is we also have the ability, because we have these huge brains, to use our higher sense, to use our intuition, to use the higher parts of our brain to say, well, maybe we just need a little bit more information. Maybe at this point, instead of judging, we need to have more compassion. And there's another part of this that I want to really drive home, because some people, I was reading some posts, and some people were getting downright angry about the whole situation. And a lot of them were women, but women, men, I think, again, it's a human experience to go into these places. And when I say places, I mean like go into the projection and the blaming and the judgment. But I want to remind you of this. When you are going into blaming and judgment and projection, it's important to remember that, first of all, like I said earlier, that when the brain doesn't have enough information, it's going to try to fill in the blanks, but you have the ability to overcome that and recreate your own interpretation, such as, well, maybe we don't have enough information yet. Maybe we should be more compassionate. So you have the ability to take the higher steps. And secondly, for those that are really losing it out there, whether it be with this hiker, you can, whatever scenario it is, chances are there's something that has come up in the news and the media that has really gotten you angry. What is causing you to be so angry? What is causing you to judge? Because I want to remind you here, and there was part of me that so badly wanted to go into these Facebook groups and say this in the Facebook group, but I realized it's not the right place to put this in. Like, people actually pay me to help them with this. And the last thing I want is to be in that energy of a pissing contest with somebody that just doesn't get it. But what is causing you to feel so angry and to victim blame and to be annoyed with the mom who dropped her off and to judge? Ask yourself that question. So one of the things that I was reading is that, there was this woman legitimately, like, I just don't understand why this woman was hiking alone. Doesn't she know that there's male predators out there? That stirred up a whole other argument. So that to me was another clue. When we react the way we do sometimes out of judgment and victim blaming, oftentimes it's a reflection of ourselves, isn't it? Because remember, we're all mirroring each other all the time. So when you start to go into that place of projecting outward, what you're essentially doing is you're giving your personal power away to that situation. You have no power when you're blaming and shaming other people. No power. And if that isn't motivation for you enough to consider other ways of being, because we're all here because we want to build our inner empire, I'm guessing. But how is that not only helping other people, but what is that saying about yourself? And most of the time, if you get really self-reflective and ask yourself these questions, no matter what the situation is. So I'm talking about the hiker, but it could be anything. Think of a situation where it was out of your control, basically. Maybe it was a missing child or something, and you got on to what was the mother thinking? What was the father thinking? What was wrong with these people? What is that saying about you? And I'm not saying this in a blaming, shaming tone, but what is that saying about you? Knowing that we all reflect each other. Knowing that our ego's job is to keep us safe no matter what. And I don't want to give the answer away. I really want you to get really self-reflective and ask the questions. But chances are, if you ask yourselves these questions, the answers that you're going to get will probably have something to do with fear of your own safety. And knowing that we're mirrors of each other, we see ourselves in other people. We see ourselves in the mistakes that other people make. So maybe you're looking at this young lady who's lost right now in the White Mountains, and you're thinking, that could have been me when I forgot my rain poncho one day. That could have been me when I forgot my crampons that day. That could have been my daughter when I dropped her off for a hike one day because it was something that she truly loves doing. That could have been my son. That could have been my niece, my nephew. That could have been somebody that I truly love, or that could have been myself. Right? So here is your invitation. Now we're going into the thick of the holiday season right now. This is your invitation to invite in more compassion. To invite in more compassion. And if you find yourself getting into the blaming and the shaming, because it's easy to do, especially right now, when we're going to be sitting at the table, maybe with people that we don't always spend a lot of time with, maybe their political views are different than ours, it doesn't matter. And also, side note, you always have a choice around who you spend your energy with, okay? I always got to add that little piece in. But if you're choosing to spend your energy and time and holidays around people that you normally don't see that may be different from you, here's your opportunity to have compassion. Have compassion. And notice when your brain tries to fill in the information that it doesn't have, you have the opportunity to notice that. Right? We have these higher brains for a reason. Let's use them. When you are in victim shaming and victim blaming and projection, you're using the lower part of your brain, your survival brain. So we as humans, we pride ourselves in being, having these big heads and these big brains. Let's use them. Right? Let's use them. So that is all I'm going to say. I wanted to keep this short. I'm very proud of myself for keeping it short today. I want to get this out to you as soon as possible. And whenever you listen to this, whether it's before the Thanksgiving holiday, on the Thanksgiving holiday, on the weekend of the Thanksgiving holiday, or sometime years from now, I just want to send you lots and lots of love and gratitude for pushing play today, for listening to this podcast until the end, and for all of your support. It means the world to me. You have no idea. So until next time, goddesses, remember to be radiant, be powerfully authentic, and know that you can reclaim your fire at any time. I love you so much. Bye-bye. Hi, this is Angela Noel, and thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have found value in listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could kindly share this podcast with those you care about. Please help me spread the word of empowerment and possibility and expansion by sharing this podcast. Or you could also leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Remember to follow me on Instagram at I am Angela Noel, or you could go to my website at www.angelanoelinternational.com to learn more about my work and to find out how you can work with me. Thank you very much.